Hello and welcome or welcome back. I'm Rebecca at Sew Pomona and I'm so glad you're here. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. All right, so today I'm going to be sewing up Vogue 1914. Today we're going to start on the top. Next week I'll be doing the pants and then eventually I'll be getting to the asymmetrical cardigan. You can find this pattern currently in stores or on the Something Delightful website. And as always, all the links will be below in the description. And of course, you can always skip ahead using the chapter timestamps that I've put into the video. Today I'm filming in a new space. This is my living room as my closet is under construction. Last week what happened is my husband's side of his closet fell down, probably from the weight of all his pants, and I have to redo the whole room. So it was time for a refresh. I took everything out and it's all currently in my filming space, which is in the hallway upstairs. I've repainted it a lovely pale grayish blue and it looks beautiful, and I'm putting in new furniture as we speak. That's one of my projects for today, but that means also that there's no sewing going on here this week. But today I'm really excited to share this first sew along. So let's get into it. So today we'll be making View A, which is a slim fit cardigan that I'm wearing right now. It has 3 buttons and it's a slim V-neck cardigan that has a 3-button front and neckline facings. It also has this lovely gathered bust feature here on the side and a cropped length that hits just at the waist, as you can see. This comes in 2 size ranges, extra small to medium, and large to extra, extra large. I cut my pattern in the straight size medium, which is a 12 to 14 in Vogue patterns, which is my usual size. Sorry if there are noises going around in the background. The kids are off school today because we had floodwaters yesterday with all the rain we had in the last week. This pattern calls for moderate knits with at least 35% stretch. You can measure your fabric using the guideline on the pattern. For this sew along, I will be making all 3 views. We're going to start with the top and then move on to the bottoms, and eventually I'll be doing the asymmetrical top. And I'm going to be using an organic cotton and Tencel knit in this deep teal that is from Core Fabrics. I love this fabric. It's so soft and it just feels great. It's Pantone color 194324 TCX, and it's fully opaque with a 4-way 90% stretch. This fabric is 59 inches wide, 66% Tencel, 28% organic cotton, and 6% spandex, weighing in at almost 6 ounces. So let's get started. So for cardigan A, this pattern calls for 1 3/8 to 1.5 yards of 60-inch fabric. And for interfacing, you're going to need 20 inches of 5/8 yard to 3/4 yard. You're also going to need 3 7/8 inch buttons for this project. I suggest reading through the pattern instructions fully before you start any project, just so that you have a general idea of what's going on. You'll see I skip around steps a bit in my preferred order of construction. I'll make sure to mention each step number that I'm working on as I go through the process in the video. To begin, cut out all your pieces using the guide and the directions. We're starting with the cardigan View A, which means you'll need to cut out pieces 1 through 5 and then interface pieces 4 and 5. You'll cut piece number 2 on the fold, and you'll cut 1 center back facing number 5. Then you'll cut 2 layers each of the other pieces. Step 3. I used a simple light waist blouse interfacing I had in my stash, and it worked perfectly. I ironed it to the wrong side of my pieces and pressed following the manufacturer instructions. I like to start by serging the outer edges of my interface sections for a clean finish, but you could also follow the instructions in step 4 that have you turn in the outer edges 1/4 inch. Next, you'll sew the two number 4 pieces to center back number 5 at a 5/8 inch seam allowance. I'll be using my serger to construct this garment, but we'll base some pieces first on my Janome sewing machine. You can sew this entire garment without a serger, following the instructions, or using a stretch or zigzag stitch on your machine. When I'm using my regular machine, I prefer a narrow zigzag stitch if I'm not using the serger. At this point, I like to take my facing over to my pressing station and press the seams, and then make sure everything's laying nice and flat. Now we'll go back to step number 1. Gather the front side edges between the dots. You're going to gather the front side edges between the dots to make the bust dart gathers. I like to mark mine with pins, but you could also use thread tracing or chalk. You'll make 2 rows of long, loose stitches and then pull the top thread gently to gather. You'll do this on both front pieces. Now I'll baste my sides 1 to the back 2, adjusting my gathers to match. I like to go slowly at this part and hold my gathers on top with my hand. And you'll see now I'm sewing the shoulder in the same method at 5/8 inch. And now I've flipped the fabric over and I am sewing the other shoulder in the same method. Now I'm moving on to the other side seam, and I'm going to sew that in the same way I did the other side, holding my gathers gently as I go through the machine. At this point, it's also a great time to try on your top and check the fit before serging or adding sleeves, especially if you want to check the hem before getting to that step, since this is a cropped cardigan. Now that everything's basted, I'm bringing it over to my serger to run everything through the machine and secure all my edges. Now we're on to step 5. Pin the facing to the garment, right sides together, matching your notches and seams, and sew or serge at 5/8 inch. Now that everything's pinned into place, I'm bringing it over to my machine to sew my 5/8 inch seam allowances. Now I'll sew the lower edge of the facing at 1 1/4 inch above the raw edge, making sure my fronts match when overlapped. Now I'll repeat that step on the other side at 1 1/4 inch, and I've already marked these before bringing them to the machine. When I'm doing this step, I like to go back and forth once or twice to make sure my seam is very secure. At this point, I check my seams to make sure I don't have any puckers and make sure everything's sewn correctly. Next, I'll understitch the facing to the seam allowance, close to the edge. This step can be a bit fiddly, just make sure all your work is over to the right and you're just sewing in the seam allowance. Now you can trim any loose threads. Step 6. Turn the facing to the inside. Turn up your hem to match and press. And here's my trick for turning my corners. I like to stick a tweezer in to the corner and hold the edge down with my other side of my tweezer on the outside and then flip the piece over. At this point, now that I have the facing in, I like to go back over that shoulder seam and I'll put a stitch in the ditch in between the shoulder seam and to keep the facing secure. One thing that always drives me crazy with this machine is that my needle gets unthreaded constantly, so I'm always rethreading. Now that I've understitched my facing, it's time to trim. I'm using duckbill scissors here to get into that seam, cut everything, and making sure not to cut the right side of my fabric. As you're sewing with a knit, there's no need to worry about the edge, but of course you can follow the instructions and turn your edge under. Press your hem in place and pin to secure as needed. Step 7, top stitching. You can do this on your machine with a narrow zigzag or stretch stitch. I'm going to use my cover stitch machine for this part of the process. I like to line up the edge and use my guides on my machine to keep my top stitching even. You could also put down some tape to line up your edge. After I've used the cover stitch on the hem, it's time to move to the neckline facing to secure that in place. And I'll do that the same width as I did the hem facing. Once everything's cover stitched, I'll take out my scissors and trim the excess away. Now on to the sleeves. Step 8. Using a wide stitch, add a row or two of E-stitching. My machine is set to about a 5 or so. Nice long loose stitches. You'll do this close to the edge, in between the 2 notches. I like to hold on to my top thread and keep it out of the way so it doesn't get tangled. Pull your top threads gently to gather the stitches. Step 9. Line up the outer edges of the sleeve, right sides together, and stitch at 5/8 inch. When I'm doing an arm, I don't tend to use any pins. I just hold the fabric to itself. With the knit, it tends to stick to itself. And then having the sleeve folded in half, I'll just run it through the serger using my guide on my serger for my 5/8 inch seam allowance. Now I'm back at my pressing station, getting my sleeves ready to be inserted. Now we're going to skip ahead to step number 11. Place your sleeve inside the armhole of the body, right sides together. Pin in place, easing to fit, and matching your notches. I like to first base the whole sleeve in place and then turn it right side out to check to make sure my seam looks good before taking it to the serger to finish. I often find I'll get little puckers, and I like to double check that before I'm serging anything. Nigel! Nigel, just please be quiet for 10 minutes. After you've serged it, press the seam allowance in toward the body. Step 10. Once I have my sleeves in, I will try on my top and check the hem for the arm length and pin in place. Then I turn the sleeves inside out to cover stitch the sleeve hem. I find this inside out method is the easiest to get in the tight areas as I overstitch my edges. Trim the excess. Finishing, steps 12 to 13. Use your buttonhole guide pattern piece to mark your buttonholes. I like to place my guide directly on top of my fabric and then pin directly into the tissue. Then I'll pull it gently off, leaving the pins in place. Then I'll mark with chalk. The pins help to give it a strong base to mark against. You'll see here I tried both sides of this simple white button. Sometimes the backs are just as pretty as the fronts. Now it's time to audition buttons. I usually go through my stash first to try out what I have and see what works best before buying something new. Always check the weight and size. A heavy button can cause draping issues as the weight pulls the fabric down, especially on a knit. Now I'll sew my buttonholes in place using my Janome 3-step buttonhole. I really love this feature on the machine. My last one had a 1-step process, but this 3-step function gives you a lot more control on the length and the width of your stitches. I like to go over mine more than once in each direction for a bit more coverage. Now it's time to get out my button making kit. I love this wide awl to cut my buttons open against the wooden apple block. You could also, of course, use your seam ripper to carefully cut this out. Last year for Earth Day, I did a demo on sustainable hand sewing, and I have a handout sheet on sewing buttons and basic sewing techniques. I'll link it in the description. I'd be happy to do a video demo on this if anyone's interested in it. Just let me know in the comments. Now it's time to sew on the buttons. Sew on those buttons by hand or on your machine and the cardigan is complete. Try it on and enjoy. Next weekend, our family's taking a long weekend vacay up in Cocoa Beach with our whole family. So I'm really excited to get my new makes ready to pack. I'll be making a pack-along video and also showing what I'm wearing each day up on my vacation. And soon I'll be doing another video on everything I've made in the last few months. So what have you been sewing so far this spring? I know I always get excited to start sewing in the spring. Something about the season just puts me in the mood to sew. Be sure to let me know what you're working on in the comments, and let me know if you have any questions about this pattern. That's it for today. Thanks so much for watching. And until next time, happy sewing.